So I wanted to share one other little story from West Africa, from Mali, with the Welesebugu Utah Alliance. And this was an experience we had in the back of a Toyota Land Cruiser, driving for several hours out through the bush in about 2000, maybe 1999. And we're bouncing over these dirt roads, and we're going to look at a village health clinic and examine the training program and the clients that we have been preparing to be village health workers in two people per village. So one male, one female for every village of about 25 in this Malian arrondissement, which we might call a county here in the US. And as we're moving along, we start talking about worker-owned co-ops in Africa. And this doctor, his name was Dr. Bubu, he and I are discussing co-ops, how workers can come together and start their own business collectively and share in the profits when they have success, share the pain when they don't, and in the process, empower the village rather than just help a few individuals. The US economy is more individually based, free enterprise, entrepreneurship. In West Africa, much of the economy is based on co-ops where people labor together to serve each other, to help each other, to lift the group, to lift the community. And so after some discussion and the exploration of the fact that we had been organizing a few women's co-ops, agriculture co-ops at Welesebugu over the years, and we were anticipating going to see some of those and visit with the women leaders, Dr. Bubu asked me this question. He says, "Professor, do you have co-ops like we do in the United States?" And I said, "Oh yes, we have a long history of worker-owned co-ops. My state, the state of Utah, was founded with cooperatives known as United Orders, where pioneer people came together in their desert, just like you do today in your desert, and collectively get access to water and grow crops, build schools, and have a future." And I said, "In fact, even my children have a co-op, my sons." He said, what is their co-op? I said, "Since the time they were 7, we had them mow people's lawns. And at one point, we had 5 of our sons in a little worker co-op, the Woodworth Boys Co-op, the Grass Cutter Co-op." He said, "So what would they do?" And I said, they get jobs and cut people's lawns with lawnmowers, and then they pool their money and collectively can buy something together, like a video game or a computer, or prepare for their college educations, etc." And he said, "So how does it work?" I said, "Well, each of our children would have a day, each of our sons would have a day when he would access the lawnmower and the others couldn't use it. And he would take the lawnmower and go cut neighbors' yards that he had a contract to cut their lawns every week." And he said, "What is a lawn?" And I realized how out of touch I was and how naive I was to think they would understand what I was talking about. I said, "A lawn is something that is green, and it's grasses that grow out of our dirt around our homes in the US." And he said, "Oh, like the grasses we have growing here." The grasses they have growing there is millet. Millet produces seeds. We feed them to our birds. There in West Africa, that's a main source of their food. So many African children have extended bellies. They're not starving to death, but they're malnourished because they don't get much protein. And so we're exchanging notes and discussions about African family life and homes and yards versus American family lives and homes and yards. And so I explain that we like lots of grass in our yards here in the US. And he said, but I thought you lived in a desert area of Utah, like we have here. And I said, yes, it's very much a desert, but we still want to have yards full of green grass. And I showed him a little photo of grass. And he said, well, that's very different than our grass. I said, yes, ours is domesticated. And he said, do you eat it? Do you eat your grass? And I said, no, we don't eat it. We mow it so that the grass looks nice, that the yard looks well organized. We like to have what people in the U.S. call a manicured yard. He said, even in the deserts? And I said, yes. He said, so when your sons cut the neighbor's grass, then what do they do with it? Do they feed it to your animals? I said, no. We don't have animals except dogs and cats in my house and too many children. I said, what we do is we put it in a bag and then we take it out and throw it in our trash, and we pay the city to come and take away our grass. He said, so you have to buy seed to plant your grass. Is that right? I said, yes. He said, now you live in a desert, so how do you get water? I said, we have to buy water to put on our seed so that our lawns will grow and the grass will grow. He said, but you don't let it grow 4 feet like our millet in our country and our grasses, native grasses here. The more I talked to Dr. Boo, the more I realized what contradictions we have in our own society. Here they are. They've lived in mud huts for 1,000 years. They are impoverished. They have a desert. They've had this 2 decades almost of drought. They grow mostly millet. They try to raise a few chickens and roosters and goats, but it's difficult to raise much of any other livestock because it's so dry. And is in his mind, as Dr. Boo-Boo's thinking about our society with his framework of his home there in Walesa-Booboo region, he can't understand. And the more we discussed it, the more crazy I decided we were. Why not just live simply, grow what we can in our desert, but not go to the extent we have been recently, in which we're emptying the waters from the planet to have beautiful lawns because we like green lawns. He said to me, can't you just paint your lawn if you want something green, like we can paint buildings here? I said, then in fact, some people in Arizona and California do just that. He laughed. He thought that was so crazy. And the more he laughed, the more crazy I realized it was. But here we are in this desert region, setting up a little co-op for my sons to go get business from their neighbors, from our friends, who spent a lot of money buying land, cultivating it, putting fertilizer into it, then planting seeds, then putting in expensive sprinkler systems, and paying a ton of money for their monthly water bills, to then cut that lawn every week, put it in bags, have it hauled to the dump, and not feed any of it to our animals. It just didn't make sense. So I think we've got a lot in the West, here in the United States, here in the Western part of the world, to learn from our African friends, our Latino friends, from our Asian colleagues about the way to live more simply, the way to live more sustainably, the way to reduce some of our costs, use less water, live more humbly, and have a greater amount of resource for the rest of the world. So continuously in this development work, one of the lessons I take away from what I do is that we're not the experts going to the third world to educate them, to train them, to help them improve their lives. It's a reciprocity process. The fact is we've got to work together and learn from each other. And I hope that out of that experience I had in West Africa with Walesa-Booboo and Dr. Boo-Boo, I realize that we're learning from one another and I'm not the big development expert